here for summertime, and the sharks are out there.
Hey, you can still go swimming.
I'm not going in that water. No chance, fancy pants. The debt showdown inching toward a Sunday face-off at the White House. The president calling for a grand bargain in a deal to take a machete to our $14 trillion debt. Indiana Republican Congressman Mike Pence with me now. He's also running for governor back in Indiana. And welcome back here. We're going to hear from the Speaker,
Thanks,
John
Bill.
Boehner, about 15 minutes, so I want to make you aware of that. I want to talk about the debt and the debt ceiling, what happens there, but I can't ignore what's happening now with this jobs number. 18,000 jobs added, 39,000 government jobs slashed across the country. That's where Boehner will speak. What do we do about this, Congressman?
Well, what we've got to do is something different than what we've been doing. You know, when a lot of us opposed the president's stimulus bill at the outset of this administration, we said the only thing it would stimulate would be you know, more deficits and more debt. And then that's turned out to be true. When the stimulus was passed, unemployment was about 7.5%. Now these heartbreaking numbers as unemployment rises again, well over 9%. We just got to take a different tack. And I think it's going to be a combination of putting certainty into the tax code. We ought to get past this 2-year extension of tax rates. We ought to make tax rates permanent. We ought to look for an opportunity to lower the corporate tax rate. But then, and this is directly related to the debt ceiling debate, we have got to take decisive action to put our fiscal house in order in Washington, D.C. Other than adding certainty to the tax code, there's nothing we could do to put people back in Indiana to work, to put people across America to work, than changing the way we spend the people's money in real and meaningful ways in the short term and the long term.
It seems like everyone in Washington sings the same song, but how we get there, I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. Now, I was in the Carolinas last week on the shore down there, and I had to tell you, man, I feel the double-dip recession already here, whether it's real estate prices or the lack of commercial traffic or whether it's the restaurants. This is a very real issue for how we get this thing going again. Now, on this debt limit, will you vote to raise it?
You know, I've been very clear, Bill, and let me go back to your other point, though, because I don't think it's said enough on national television. You know, as I crisscross around the state of Indiana in my campaign for governor, I'm meeting with everyday Hoosiers, and people are hurting out there. I mean, families are struggling. Indiana's got a lower unemployment rate than the national level, but a whole lot of people have quit looking for work. A lot of people have gone back to work making a lot less than they were making before. So we've got to take decisive action. Now, people call this debt crisis or this debt situation a crisis. I think it's an opportunity. I think we've got an opportunity, and they're talking about a grand bargain now. We've got an opportunity to cut spending now in real, meaningful ways, perhaps even cut taxes and cap spending going forward. And I also believe, and I'm going to take a stand, that we should not increase the debt ceiling unless we make such an increase contingent on sending a balanced budget amendment to the states for ratification.
So that's the only qualification you have? Otherwise, you'll vote to raise the debt ceiling?
Well, look,
if you get the amendment?
Yeah. Well, I've been clear that I'm not going to support any increase in the debt ceiling without real and meaningful changes in the way we spend the people's money in the short term and the long term. I think that means dollar-for-dollar cuts today. I'd like to see statutory caps. I would welcome tax reductions. We could even eliminate some of these special interest loopholes to get there if we can lower rates and make rates permanently lower on individuals and businesses. But yes, I think the time has come to let the states decide. You know, I've been out here for 10 years, Bill. I've been fighting runaway federal spending under both political parties. We need a new force in Washington, D.C. to demand that both parties start to live within our means. I think that's going to require us to amend the Constitution, and so I believe any increase in the debt ceiling should be contingent on sending a balanced budget amendment to the states, and I'm going to fight for it.
Listen, the majority of Americans agree with you. Fox polling, are you in favor of balanced budget amendment? 72% say yes. And this is where it gets tricky. When asked, would you go for program cuts like Medicare or Social Security, 63% say no. When asked about tax hikes, 62% say no. There's your debate.
Well, look, the first debate is what's the objective? You know, whether it's in business or in policy, you should begin with the end in mind. And I think the reason you see that support for a balanced budget amendment, the reason 32 states today, including Indiana, have constitutional requirements for balanced budget or prohibition on debt, is because the American people know, well, start with the goal of having a national government that achieves balanced budgets. I think,
Okay.
you know, let's have that debate. And I think any increase in the debt ceiling should be contingent on sending a balanced budget amendment to the states. Let's ignite a national debate over whether or not the federal government ought to live within its means, ought to live under a balanced budget requirement.
seems like-
You add that to cuts and caps, and we'll get this deal done.
Seems like they agree with you on the first point, but the pain is still a difficult pill for a lot of people to swallow. Mike Pence, thank you. The Republican
Bill.
from Indiana, running for governor in the Hoosier State. Heather.
And you just heard Republicans want spending cuts equal to or greater than the amount of a debt limit increase. Democrats want to raise taxes to increase